Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelley Pruitt, and as always, my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Mr. Ryan Roberts. Hi, guys. How are you tonight?
Good.
Good, man. Good.
That was a really enthusiastic good.
I have to tell you, this one is going to be very fun. We are going to be talking about the most hated woman in America. Wow. And she really earned that moniker at some points in her life. You guys know a little bit about Madalyn Murray O'Hair?
Yeah, I know a little bit about her. I know this is a very Texas-based story. And you have been super excited about this for the past couple of weeks. You've been calling, guys, you're never going to guess what I found out about this woman. I found this out and I found that out. So I'm excited to see what you have figured out, because I know when you're excited about something, it's going to be really good.
Because Shelley delves in the furthest of furthest rabbit holes and pulls out these crazy things, and you're just like, I'm sorry, what?
Did you know she used Crest toothpaste on Tuesdays in 1975? What?
I do a really deep dive. I really usually do. And my goal in doing that is to understand the person, because it's my opinion that if you want to be able to speak, intelligently about them, then you have to understand everything that you possibly can about them to see how they came to be who they are. And maybe that will help to give you a little insight as to who they became. And I ran down some rabbit holes. Absolutely. I am too.
I'm excited because I know enough about her, basically who she was, what she did, and the end of the story, which I'm not going to jump for you. But I don't know the nitty gritty. So I'm kind of going in a little blind tonight, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of eye rolling. Just watch my faces tonight, people. It's fine.
Well, okay. So now again, before we start this episode, there are going to be a few disclaimers. Again, I will not sanitize history for you. That is disrespectful to those who lived it. So you are probably going to be hearing something that might offend you. If you have delicate sensibilities, turn it off. Okay. We are discussing the three things you should never discuss: religion, politics, and sex.
Oh, hell.
And most likely I'm going to say something that you're not going to like at some point. Okay. Number 3, thou shalt not troll the believers. Number 4, thou shalt not troll the non-believers. And thou shalt not quote from your religious text. I've been to church. I've read the Bible. This story is not about you and your religion. It is the story about Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Put your ego aside. Okay? Because I don't care. I don't care if you believe in the Bible, the Quran, the Book of Mormon, the Book of the Purple People Eater. I don't care. This is not about that.
It's about her story.
and to be honest, I don't care what your personal beliefs are. I love you all equally.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about her, and let's be very clear. This is not a story about religion, contrary to what you might believe.
That was one hell of a damn disclaimer, Shelley.
I'm telling you.
Let's fucking delve into this shit.
Yeah, let's go. Because this is not a story about religion, believe it or not. It is a story about separation of church and state. Religion's part of it, but not the only part.
All right. Cool.
Here we go.
Hit me with it.
So, the most hated woman in America was the title bestowed upon Madalyn Murray O'Hair by Life magazine. And so you have to ask, how does a girl from Pennsylvania become worthy of such venom? How does she become so reviled? How does she become so hated? She refuses to sit down. She refuses to shut up. She refuses to conform. She didn't just rewrite the book. She tore it up and set it on fire. Literally.
Are we talking about Madalyn or Shelley? Sorry, couldn't help it. Go ahead.
All right. Now, Madalyn Murray O'Hair was many things. A bulldog, a feminist, a champion, a pariah, a heretic, and ultimately a victim. She is a true ferocious female, and this is her story. Lena Christina Scholl was one of 10 children raised in the Lutheran faith, and as a teenager, she worked as a maid to earn money and help support her family. John Irwin Mays, also from a large lower class family, was a carpenter by trade and grew up in a Presbyterian household. Now, whenever Lena met John, this must have been love at first sight because they were married within a few days of meeting each other. And not long after, they had a little boy they named John Mays Jr., and they called him Irv for short.
How do you get Irv out of John?
I don't know.
I was just sitting there thinking the same damn thing.
Well,
Okay.
his middle name was Irwin because he,
Okay.
so they called him
Gotcha.
Irv for short.
Gotcha.
For short.
Okay.
And so this little family lived in a modest, they lived in a modest life in Beechview, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then 2.5 years later, they had a daughter. April 13th, 1919, on Palm Sunday, Madalyn Evelyn Mays was born. The circumstances of Madalyn's background and early life are cloudy and are bitterly disputed. So I'm going to put that up right off the bat.
Okay.
But according to Madalyn's son, Bill, Madalyn's birth wasn't a happy occasion.
Oh.
Allegedly, Lena was very unhappy in her marriage and was really not excited about having a second mouth to feed. And it's rumored that Lena tried unsuccessfully to abort the child by jumping out of a second-story window, breaking her ankle.
Holy
Other
shit.
sources say that she threw herself down a flight of stairs, but either way, the new child's birth wasn't considered a blessing. Now, Lena said that Madalyn was born with an unusual dark membrane covering her entire body, like a black shroud. The doctor attending the birth, he was startled and he said it was unusual, but he offered no further explanation for the bizarre circumstance. And Madalyn's grandmother insisted that Lena keep a portion of the membrane, maybe as some sort of odd keepsake, but exactly why is unknown.
No.
Yeah, no.
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 So I know. I'm telling you, y'all, this is how deep I dug on her, okay?
This is how she comes into this world.
This is how
Yes.
she comes into this world.
Oh God.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, being that the women of the time, whenever they got married, they would take the faith of their husband.
Mhm.
Madalyn was baptized in the Presbyterian Church. Okay.
Okay.
And the Mays home might have been described as a little less than loving. Lots of yelling and sparring went on within the walls. And Madalyn would tell reporters years later, it was just so bizarre. I could walk blocks from my house, close my eyes, and still find my way home by the sounds of the yelling, screaming, and profanity. I came out of my childhood with a severe drinking problem and a lot of messed up ideas. That's a direct quote from Madalyn.
She looks back on it with love and adoration.
Yes.
I see. I got it. Okay.
So Madalyn's father, who she called Pup, or the old man, he did what he could to provide for his family by taking on kind of odd jobs. And these jobs often required him to leave the family behind while he roamed for work. And in the 1920s, he started his own little construction business in Pittsburgh. But with the onset of the Great Depression, by the end of 1929, Pup was broke. After going bankrupt in the construction business, Pup opened up a roadhouse that served as a brothel, and he turned to rum running during Prohibition to make some extra cash.
Hell yeah.
All right. Hell yeah, my kind of guy.
My kind of guy. Come on now.
Now, in 1934, due to financial woes, they were forced to move from their home. Pup moved the family to Akron, Ohio, where he hoped to find work in the steel and the rubber industries. And for most of her childhood, Madalyn and her family were constantly moving around Pennsylvania and Ohio, living with relatives in different areas. And although O'Hair would later claim that she enjoyed a luxurious childhood, the reality was that her family was just scraping by. Friends would often bring food to the Mays family when they knew that Madalyn's father was broke. And it's unclear when young Madalyn started thinking about God and about religion, but think she did. In an interview with Playboy magazine in 1965, she said that her eureka moment came when she was 12 or 13 years old. And she stated, and I quote, "It was then that I was introduced to the Bible. We were living in Akron and I wasn't able to get to the library. So I had two things to read at home, a dictionary and a Bible. Well, I picked up the Bible and I read it from cover to cover one weekend, just as if it were a novel, very rapidly. And I've never gotten over the shock of it." The miracles, the inconsistencies, the improbabilities, the impossibilities, the wretched history, the sordid sex, the Satanism in it, and the whole thing shocked me profoundly. She also stated that she was intellectually traumatized by the words on the pages.
Tell us how you really fucking feel,
Right.
Madalyn.
Shit.
Damn.
Tell you, she's a damn character. Now,
Sounds like it.
the child who read the pages went to her parents and asked them, "Do you know what's in the Bible?" Lena drew herself up staunchly and said, "That's not my Bible." Now remember, she was Lutheran. They practiced out of a different Bible than the Presbyterians did. Madalyn was astonished that her parents actually believed in this, as she put it, bullshit.
Damn.
I know.
She came out the gate swinging, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so when Madalyn was a teenager, her family lived with Lena's brother in Rossford, Ohio, where she attended Rossford High School. It was an academically rigorous school with underlying religious ideals. And Madalyn was described by her peers as very intelligent, strong-willed, holding strong personal beliefs, and always daydreaming about her big plans for the future. And much of her free time was spent in the drugstore across the street from the house, listening to classical music and joining in on political discussions. And it was here that she began to formulate her opinions about government, how it functioned, and the unfair paternal aspects of the law. In 1936, at the age of 17, Madalyn graduated from Rossford High School and then enrolled in the University of Toledo on a National Youth Administration Scholarship with the hopes of becoming a doctor. And she also took a secretary job to help the family make ends meet. Now, while at school, she met a steel worker named John Henry Roths. And of course, it was a whirlwind romance. On October 9th, 1941, at the age of 22, the lovebirds, they eloped. Impulsive? Yes. But Madalyn always seemed to know what she wanted. But their wedding bliss was promptly interrupted on December 7th, 1941, by the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So, by reason of patriotism, or perhaps seeking excitement in her life, Madalyn and John Roths enlisted in service during World War II.
Oh, they both did.
They both did.
Oh, okay.
John Roth, he went into the Marine Corps, and Madalyn went into the Women's Army Corps. And of course, the hot flame of passion was very quickly extinguished, and in 1943, they decided to separate. But during this time, Madalyn tested to become an officer. Her high IQ led her to the rank of second lieutenant, and she became a cryptographic officer for the Signal Corps. She traveled to many different countries and became intrigued by the different cultures and people. Quick little side note here, one of her jobs was to invent battle details and report the lies to the media.
Nice.
She worked.
She was doing psyops. That's awesome.
She was in the propaganda machine. So
That's
she
awesome.
got taught how to tell a story.
That explains so much
Okay.
about her.
That's a really
wow.
that is something
Okay.
I found. Do you know how how deeply I had to dig to find that? That was very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Now, in 1945, while stationed in Italy as a cryptographer, Madalyn began a scandalous affair with a married man, Army Air Corps pilot officer William J. Murray Jr. He'd taken a liking to her. I mean, at least while they were stationed overseas, he took a liking to her. And very soon, Madalyn was pregnant. And when she shared this joyous news with William, he was a little less than excited. Now, in Madalyn's mind, he could just divorce his wife and they could get married. But he told her that he was a very devout Roman Catholic and he could not divorce his wife because that would be a sin. So apparently he was absent on that day. They taught about the thou shalt not commit adultery part. He must have missed that commandment. And it seemed to her as if he was using his strong religious beliefs to excuse him and use it as an excuse for shirking his responsibilities. And she thought it was funny how that didn't seem to matter when he was having fun. Well, of course, back then, if you were a woman and you got pregnant, that pregnancy ended Madalyn's service in the WAC. And she was sent back to Ohio. And whenever she got home, she found that her family was damn near destitute, living in a shack with no electricity and no running water. And she wanted to know the hell why. Because, see, she'd been sending all of her money back home with the understanding that half was for them and the rest was to be put into a savings account for her, so that when she got out of the military, she would have money and she could be out on her own. Well, here's the deal. Pup had pretty much just stopped looking for work, and he'd been spending her money on booze. Her parents spent every dime she earned.
Oh, man.
So Madalyn was devastated, pregnant, and penniless.
And fresh out of the army.
Yeah. She got to think of something quick.
Yeah. I mean, that's a horrible situation to be in.
Still can't get over the fact of what she did in the army. Damn. That literally explains so much later on in the story. Y'all just keep that mental note.
Yep.
So being pregnant, penniless, and, devastated, one evening a rainstorm rolled in. Oh, and Madalyn's mad. She's hot about all this shit going on. And she vengefully charged out into the storm. With lightning streaking through the sky, she cursed God and she challenged him. And she screamed at him, "If you're real, then strike me and my unborn child dead. Right here, right now, do it." And she hurled insults and she cursed his name. And she screamed every foul 4-letter name and 4-letter word that she knew. And the rain was pounding on her face and the lightning was crackling above and the thunder was ringing her in her ears. And yet she stood still and angry, defiant and determined. And she waited.
She had her Lieutenant Dan moment, screaming at the sky in the middle of the storm.
Lieutenant Dan, sorry.
And nothing happened. Perhaps realizing how she must look, standing out on the lawn and screaming at the sky, she gave a quiet chuckle. And she went back to the house, into the house, soaking wet and still very much alive, and decided in that moment that there was no such thing as God, that it was all a big lie. She had blasphemed, she had cursed and dared the vengeful creator to do something, but nothing happened. He didn't even fight back. Well, now her beliefs were solidified. There was nothing above and nothing below. There was no great scorekeeper in the sky. And what a fool she had been for believing in this great brainwashing conspiracy. And if things were going to change for her, she had to take action. Not just sit around and hope that someone somewhere might be listening and might decide to answer. What kind of a sadistic game was that? Hope and kneel and pray and wait and accept? No. Realize, stand, demand, do, and question. That was how things were going to get better. She knew what she was. An atheist. Now, John Ross, he'd completed his time, and he returned home to find his wife, Madalyn, after he'd completed his tour of duty. And his homecoming wasn't exactly what he expected. His wife's pregnant, somebody else's kid. But John Ross, he was actually a pretty good guy, and he decided he'd be gallant. And seeing her predicament, he said that, you know what, we'll stay married, and I'll raise the child as my own. And that way it'll protect your reputation. Madalyn told him to kick rocks and said, "I want a divorce."
I say, damn, he's trying to be a stand-up guy. But, hey, she don't like him. She don't like him. I mean, he probably should have known when he got home and Maury greeted him at the front door, you know.
He said, "Here, Miss Rotz, you are not the father."
Not the father. Yes. So May 25th of 1946, Madalyn gave birth to a baby boy. And she named him after his father. She named him William J. Murray III. She nicknamed him Bill. And then, just for fun, she legally changed her name to the last name of Murray and began calling herself Madalyn Murray. Once Officer Murray returned back to the States, Madalyn sued him for child support. And now this was highly unusual. And the court asked her to provide proof that Officer Murray was the father. So she did. She won the case by bringing in a pair of his pants, and he said, if I didn't fuck him, how did I get his pants?
God damn.
I like this lady.
She said,
wow.
And she said, if he wasn't the father, then how the hell did these get here?
I mean, she's not wrong. I mean,
well, let me tell you.
Like, did he have his name sewn into the inside of his britches or what?
It could have been there. I
could
do
have
not
been.
know.
Could have been.
But I'm going to tell you
Damn.
that was good enough for the judge. And she was awarded $15 a month child support until Bill turned 18.
Damn. Listen up, ladies. Let me tell you. Just find a pair of pants. Listen, I mean, this lady, holy shit, already. She's a character, I can already tell.
Do you see why I have been so excited to talk to you guys about her?
I mean, this lady is tenacious. She is not playing around.
I might have a little woman crush just a little bit right now.
I'm
I ain't gonna
telling
lie. Like,
so anyway, even though she was awarded the $15 a month, Officer William J. Murray Jr. was a deadbeat, and he never paid anything. She never saw a dime of her $15 a month. Mm-hmm. Now, so Madalyn always believing that she was a true pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of person. And being former military, she took out a VA loan and bought a house for her and her family in Haynesville, Ohio. And even though she couldn't stand the family at this point, I mean, they spent all her money. Nobody was working. Mm-hmm. She continued to be the dutiful daughter. Her mother, brother, and father, Pup, none of them worked. So Madalyn got a job and supported all of them on a secretary's salary while she went to school. Damn. She had taken out an education loan allowed by the GI Bill and was attending Ashland College at this point. Mm-hmm. And in 1948, Madalyn graduated second in her class with a BA in history. So she's not dumb. Second in her class. Mm-hmm. And in 1952, soon after Madalyn graduated, Pup got word. There's work in the Texas oil fields. So they packed up all their belongings into 2 cars, and they drove to Texas. But once they arrived, Puppy decided that the oil industry just really wasn't for him.
I was going to say, that fucker wouldn't work tasting pies at the pie factory. And he's going to go to the Texas oil fields? Come on now.
Oh, that's a great Ryanism, Ryan.
And so once again, they relied on Madalyn to support the family. She worked as a probation officer, took night classes at the South Texas College School of Law, and she graduated from there, earning an LLB. Now, an LLB it's kind of an outdated, it's an outdated degree because that's what's known as a Bachelor of Laws. I won't even try to give you the Latin word for it. It's a Bachelor of Laws, and it's usually for students who are beginning their law degrees. Mm-hmm. And later the terminology changed, and her degree was converted to a Juris Doctor degree of law. Mm-hmm. So anyway, she did get that. And Madalyn did take the bar exam, but she didn't pass. So her dreams of being a lawyer in that moment were dashed. But not to worry, Pup had another plan. A distant relative told him that Baltimore was where he needed to be now.
Oh,
because, see, there were construction jobs everywhere, anything he wanted. So they packed up and they moved to Baltimore. And they moved into what was known as a row house, which is basically a small duplex in kind of a questionable neighborhood. And Lena pawned her wedding ring in order to buy some furniture. Now, eventually, Irv and Pup, the brother Irv and Papa Pup, they stopped looking for work altogether.
You don't say.
Oh my God, shock face.
And for the rest of their lives, neither of them, again, would ever hold a full-time job, leaving Madalyn once again to support the entire family.
Damn.
So she got a job in the engineering department of a plane manufacturing business. And in 1953, she began an affair with one of her coworkers, a good-looking Italian man named Michael Furillo. Boy, he sounds sexy, doesn't he? Michael Furillo. He sounds sexy.
Sounds like it's right up Shelley's alley.
I'm telling you. Now, in 1953, Pup bought a television and sat in front of it with the volume up as loud as it would go for the next decade. Pausing only occasionally to argue with Madalyn and shame her for being an unwed mother that really needed to get back to church.
Well, this fucker's sitting on his ass watching TV all day, and she's out there busting her hump trying to do what she can to provide for these people. Like, I'm gonna need to sit down and shut the fuck up. I'm not here working.
Well, life doesn't get any easier for Madalyn because she has at this point found out that she is pregnant again.
Oh, hell.
And on November 16th of 1954, her second son, John Garth, was born. Again, outside of marriage. And again, due to her pregnancy, she was forced to quit her job. And with the money not coming in, she endured many heated arguments with her father about her immoral actions and poor life decisions that he just didn't agree with. And Pup never missed a chance to voice his opinion on the subject of how she was living a sinful life.
Take it away, Ryan.
He can disagree on the damn curb. So I'll be damned if I'm working. You gonna tell me what to do in my house?
Take a pair of his pants too, and just be like,
exactly. Well, that's probably the only thing he owns is a damn pair of pants. He can put them on and walk up the damn street and get the hell away from me.
Damn, Ryan, you got some strong opinions on this story.
Well, I mean, she's doing the best that she can.
She's doing everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
Let's face it.
Maybe it comes from experience a little bit. My mom.
Ow.
Busted her
That
tail
hurt me,
when
and
I
I'm
was
not
growing
even in
up.
the room.
And hey, if somebody wants to throw stones and ain't really contributing, they can go throw stones from somewhere else.
They can go kick rocks.
Shelley, I do believe you've struck a nerve, as they call it.
There's one thing that Madalyn is. She is definitely polarizing, and I'm glad that we have passion.
I like her. I like her so far.
So after the birth of John Garth, Madalyn worked various jobs, often 2 or 3 at a time. She was a waitress, and back when she was younger, she was cute. And so she also worked as a model. She was also a hairdresser, a stenographer, a lawyer's assistant, an advertising manager, and a psychiatric social worker. But Madalyn kind of always felt like an outsider in society. She described herself as being misplaced in America. And in 1956, Madalyn joined the Socialist Labor Party, the SLP. Her past history and legal education proved useful, and she began speaking at their meetings and participating in their marches and protests that were held by the organization. And it's during this period that she kind of turns to a more radical form of politics. She attended meetings also at I knew how to say this a minute ago, Trotskyite Socialist Workers' Party in 1957. So she's going all in on these socialist ideals. Mm-hmm. And in 1959, she applied for Soviet citizenship, but she got no response. And undeterred, she and her 2 children traveled to Europe by ship on the Queen Elizabeth with the intention of defecting to the Soviet embassy in Paris. Now, Madalyn's son, William Murray, later stated that the Soviet embassy did not know what to do. This was the first time they'd ever had anybody trying to defect to them.
This Lesbian lobby, strung like bull, wants to come live in Soviet Union.
God damn it, Ryan.
Oh my God. So her petition, though, was ultimately denied, and Madalyn Murray and her sons returned back to Baltimore in 1960. Now, in 1960, she was the supervisor at the Baltimore Public Welfare Department and the psychiatric social worker. This is the time she was doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, this woman worked constantly. And a couple of days into September, Madalyn was informed by her 14-year-old son, Bill, that they'd missed the enrollment date for school and school's already started.
Oh.
Okay, so she's supporting her mother, her father, her deadbeat brother, Irv, her 2 little boys, and not a damn person could help her and take the kid to school and get him enrolled.
No shit.
I mean, they were literally doing nothing else. Except for Pup. I mean, Pup, he's busy watching TV. So frustrated. She had to wait until she got a day off to take Bill up to get him enrolled. And after a few days, she finally got the morning free, and she took Bill up to the school to fill out the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And as they wandered in the hallways, making their way to the office, Madalyn noticed that the school was silent. Strange silent. It was morning. She expected to hear the chatter of children and the voices of teachers, but the halls were eerily noiseless. And she looks at Bill and she says, "What the hell is going on in here?" And he told her, "It's morning devotional. All the children say the Pledge of Allegiance and the Lord's Prayer, and then, we read the daily scripture, and then a few minutes of silent devotion. And it only takes about 10 minutes, and then our school day starts."
Mm-mm.
Now, Madalyn listened in disbelief. And then she got mad. Not just mad, she got livid.
Oh,
She
hell.
was an atheist, and she raised her children as atheists. And to put it, she'd be goddamned if somebody was going to force her child to pray. So she marched Bill down to the administration office and told him that her child will not be participating in the morning prayer activities. Oh, and she also needed to enroll him. So
By the way,
This woman, man, I'm telling you.
y'all go
she
straight
is
to hell. But
fucking-
can you sign my kid up? I got to get him in here.
I got to get back to work.
I gotta get to work. That's exactly
I got
it.
shit to do today.
I really need to leave him here, but he's not going to be participating. I gotta go. This woman
So
got some balls, man.
the administrator handed Madalyn the enrollment forms and told her that the Baltimore public schools had been doing morning devotionals since before the Revolutionary War, and there really wasn't anything she could do about it.
Well, you hide and watch.
Don't ever
You
tell
told that-
Madalyn Murray
You
that.
told that to the wrong person. You could have told anybody else that, but this lady is not the one to tell.
Nope.
Oh, really? And to make matters worse, he looks at her and in a very dismissive fashion says, "You know what? If you don't like it, then sue us."
Watch out now. She got child support by showing a pair of pants.
So, Madalyn instructed Bill to document every time he was forced to do something that had any kind of religious overtones. And she told the school that Bill would be pulled out of class unless he was allowed to leave the room during morning prayer. And then, child, she started researching, and she couldn't believe what she found. Prayer wasn't just happening in Bill's school. It was the law of the land all over the country. Different versions, but basically the same mandate. And a call from the school superintendent told Madalyn that Bill would not be excused from the morning prayer. And the superintendent also told her that Bill will and shall attend the morning services. He had to stand and bow his head in reverence with the rest of the class. But he would make a special dispensation for Bill. He didn't have to say the Lord's Prayer, but the boy damn well better move his lips as if he were.
Wow.
That's a weird distinction to make. I mean, if he
Overflowing.
doesn't have to say it, why does he have to mouth it? That's interesting.
There's no difference. There's no difference.
Ooh,
If I have to move my lips.
I don't know how I would feel if that was my child today and I received a phone call or a letter like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what she did. Overflowing with rage, and this is a rageful woman, Madalyn wrote a letter to the Baltimore Sun newspaper And in it, she said, and I'm going to read you this because this is fantastic.
Oh, shit.
It starts out, I have had enough. When the last infamous epithet is cast, and when the speaker or writer quotes from an even more vile indictment of a person or a system, invariably the word they hurl is atheist. I have had enough. For I am an atheist, and I will no longer be maligned and abused by identification with all that is evil, corrupt, and noxious. So what of us? The atheists, agnostics, humanists, non-believers, and those who are unchurched. There are 68 million Americans who do not belong to a church. We have no statesman in Congress, no liaison, no representatives in the White House, no organized lobby or pressure group in Washington, D.C. Who speaks for us? Who defends us when we go to a public meeting and we are subjected to prayer in the efficacy of what we do not believe? When we handle money, why since 1955 are we confronted with the money printed and minted with "In God We Trust"? Why should our mail be stamped "Pray for Peace"? As we pledge allegiance, why should this pledge be extorted from us to a nation under your God? Is your belief so thin that you must force it upon others? I have had enough. Therefore, I have withdrawn my 14-year-old son from Woodburn Junior High in an act of civil disobedience of the Maryland Code, Article 77, Section 231, because the state of Maryland and the persons on the Board of Education of Baltimore City have violated both the First and the 14th Amendments of the Constitution of the United States by regularly requiring daily Bible reading and recitation of the Lord's Prayer in public classrooms. And may my conscience now rest in peace.
Wow.
Jesus.
Did that article come with a cassette tape of the Battle Hymn of the Republic to play in the background while you read it?
God damn, Brian. You're on fire tonight, dude. Wow.
She is mad.
I think she's had enough.
Damn.
Now, okay, so now, quick note for those of you who don't know, those monikers, those phrases have not always been on our money and in the pledge.
Right.
Yeah.
When Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the U.S. Flag Code on June 6th of 1942, just 6 months after the U.S. entered World War II, the Pledge of Allegiance had no reference to religion.
No.
Okay. In June 14th of 1954, Eisenhower signed a bill that added the phrase "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. And this was a direct result of the Red Scare. It was a period when politicians wanted to, kind of assert the moral superiority of U.S. capitalism over Soviet communism, which many conservatives, they considered the Soviets pretty godless. So in 1956, Eisenhower made "In God We Trust" the official U.S. motto. And that's when it began to appear on money and on stamps. Prior to the 1950s, there was no "In God We Trust" on American currency. Just so you know. So that was something that, maybe it was to evoke patriotism. Maybe it was to, make you feel better about being united under something.
Yeah.
But either way, she's not wrong. It is a direct violation.
She's not wrong.
No.
She's not wrong. I'll
No.
give it to her on that. She is not wrong. This woman is actually very smart about
Oh,
this.
she's extremely smart.
Yeah.
I mean, she's arguing for the constitutionality of it, and
Yeah.
she is not dumb. She knows her law. She took the damn bar exam. She knows law.
She did. She didn't pass it, but she took
Yeah.
it, and she did get a degree in the first round of what you got to get a degree in law. So she's not dumb. So in December 1960, Madalyn brought her case, Murray versus Kirtland, to the courts. Now, the Murray named in the case is her son Bill, and Kirtland that's named, that is the school board president, because you have to have a plaintiff and a defendant, so you have to have a name. Okay.
Something before we continue, something I am curious about. When she was in school, Well, I wonder, they would have to have had prayer when she was in school too, and had devotional when she was in school. So I wonder if maybe she had forgotten about it, or also like stuck in her crawled in.
She didn't decide that she was an atheist until she was more in the teenage
later.
years.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
You're right. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just. Yeah.
So, December 1960, Madalyn brought the case Murray versus Curlett. Excuse me, I misspoke. Curlett, to the courts, and it protested against the religious observation and prayer that took place in her eldest son's Baltimore public school.
Mm-hmm.
The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, actually contributed money to the case to help support the separation of church and state case. Mm-hmm. So the ACLU goes, hey, you've got a point. We're going to throw some money at it. Now, few noticed this court case until the Baltimore Sun Reporter decided to do a story on her and her son. And within days, every major television and radio network was on the story. And Madalyn Murray was a celebrity. Now, while Madalyn was becoming a star and a household name, if you will, poor Bill, he had to continue living life in his Baltimore public school. He was subjected to vicious bullying. He was punched, hit, shoved, pushed, and tripped. He would open his locker to find lines of spit dripping from the air slots. And no one stopped it. The teachers and administrators seemed to condone the actions. He was even cornered in a barbershop by a group of older kids who surrounded him and sang "Jesus Loves Me" at the top of their voices. And when he tried to escape, fleeing through the door onto the street, they tried to shove him in front of a city bus.
No.
Shit.
Now, in 1961, a local court dismissed Madalyn's suit. So she appealed it to the Maryland Court of Appeals. And she lost there too, leaving only one court left to hear the case. And on May 15th, 1962, Madalyn and Leonard, I'm going to try to get his name right, Leonard Kerpelman, the only attorney she could find to take this controversial case for free, okay, they filed an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. And within 24 hours of filing the case, she was fired from her job at the Baltimore Department of Public Welfare for incompetence. Now, here's you a quick little side note about Kerpelman. He was an ambulance-chasing lawyer who was known for taking crazy cases for publicity. He was a slip-and-fall lawyer and nuisance suit lawyer who was way out of his league on taking on a First Amendment violation lawsuit. So he decided he'd let Madalyn help him write legal briefs and such. Now, this allowed her to craft the case the way she wanted it, but use him as the mouthpiece because, after all, he is the one that had the law degree. Mm-hmm. And to everyone's surprise, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, and they combined it with a similar case that was going on in Pennsylvania called Abington Township versus Schempp. And now the Murray family became a constant target for harassment. They received death threats. Bricks and rocks were thrown through their windows. The house was egged. Her flower beds and yards were destroyed. Even little John Garth's cat was murdered and left at their doorstep as a bloody reminder of how much they were hated.
Wow.
And then the mailman showed up. Mail began to arrive in canvas bags. And much of it was hate mail. One in particular, smeared with feces.
Oh, God.
And she kept that one for a very long time.
Oh,
I hope it's a Ziploc bag.
She proudly kept that one. But some of the letters contained money. And being that she was newly unemployed and currently unemployable, the money came in handy. And Madalyn sees the value of learning the art of fundraising. So she decides she's going to give it a go. Now, at this time, she was also approached by a small atheist magazine with an offer to let her take over their mailing list. And she realized that she could turn her crusade into a business. So she took over the magazine and she kind of mainstreamed it, and she renamed it American Atheist. And in the first issue, one of the first stories she ran was an appeal for funds. Now, January 1963, Madalyn deep into her new magazine, raising 2 children, supporting her parents, her deadbeat brother, dealing with a Supreme Court case, and constantly dodging bricks that were being chunked through a window, got into a very heated argument with Pup. Now, Pup still wasn't working, and he was still blaring that television as loud as it would go. But this apparently seemed to be the exact right time to reprimand Madalyn over her life choices. He berated her about her 2 bastard children. He called her a whore and scolded her for being such an embarrassment to the family. Heated words and profanities were exchanged, and the screaming match finally ended when Madalyn stormed out of the house, screaming back at Pup, "Oh, I wish you'd just drop dead." And off she went. Now, Pup and Lena, they like to go around and collect glass bottles, because back then you could collect bottles and go and turn them in and get a recycling fee, or a return charge, as it was called. So Pup and Lena, they'd gone to collect glass bottles, and they went up to the local 5 and dime to exchange them for cash. Pup saw his favorite cashier, and he goes walking over to talk to her. Moments later, he clutched his chest, and he died of a heart attack.
Damn.
Oh.
Now, whenever
Sucks,
Madalyn,
sucks to suck. Sorry.
Now,
Jesus Christ.
Now, whenever Madalyn arrived home that evening, the house was quiet. So Madalyn turned and looked at her mother and said, "Where's the old man?" Lena looked at her and said, "I hope you're happy. You got your wish. Your father is dead." Madalyn, thinking this was some kind of ploy to get out of going to work, she said, "Well, where's the body?"
Damn.
I
like her.
Shouldn't put up with shit. That's my thing. Like,
not.
Is she kind of vile a little bit about what she says and does? So but mad respect. I'm gonna say, like, mad respect to her for that.
Well, let me tell you, the funeral arrangements and payment for the services fell squarely on Madalyn's shoulders.
Of course it did.
She told the funeral director that she wanted a cheap wooden box. But ever the dutiful daughter, she did pay the bill. And when she was given a copy of the invoice with a red pen in large bold letters, she wrote "paid in full" across it and slipped it into the casket with the old man.
Damn.
Shit.
Damn. I hope they have TV in hell.
Shit. Wow.
Good Lord.
Now, on June 17th, 1963, on June 17th, 1963, the Supreme Court ruled in an 8-1 vote that school-mandated and initiated prayer violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment and unconstitutionally breached the barrier between church and state. She had won. She was truly in rare air. Now, side note for those of you who don't know, the Establishment Clause states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Okay? Now, most would take the win and walk away. Not Madalyn.
Not Madalyn.
No.
Now, she continued to fight. And she continued to fight what she viewed was an unconstitutional connection between church and state by demanding that "In God We Trust" be removed from the U.S. coinage, and that the tax-exempt status of churches should be changed, because technically it was a governmental support of religion. She didn't care if people wanted to build a church, build it, but do it with your money that you tithe or that you raise, not taxpayer money. Now, neither of these attempts were successful, but she still continued to fight, not only for separation of church and state, but also for the freedom of religion and the freedom from religion. She sent newsletters to her followers asking for money. She wrote a letter to Life magazine that said, "We find God to be sadistic, brutal, and a representation of hatred and vengeance." And in 1964, the magazine in turn dubbed her the most hated woman in America.
I can see why.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going up against the big kahuna, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, God, she's got some damn balls.
You know what?
Shit.
And she loved it.
Oh, of course she did.
She embraced it. She called herself that, and she reveled in the seeming importance that it brought her. So in March of 1964, it actually wasn't Madalyn that brought trouble to the Murray home. It was Bill. Bill had come home from school to find his girlfriend, Susan Abramovitz, and I believe I'm saying that correct. I saw 3 different spellings of it, so I'm going to go with what is my best guesstimation, Susan Abramovitz. So he finds her on the doorstep, and she is battered and bruised and holding her suitcase. Her father, who was a prominent doctor and known in the town. Now, he was known for being a good doctor, but he was also known to abuse his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you this, that Susan's father, he didn't care for Bill one bit. Not because Bill was an atheist. He didn't like him because he wasn't Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took out his frustrations about the relationship that Susan was having with Susan with his fists. She had a black eye and a chipped tooth. And when Madalyn saw this, she was pissed off. She was outraged. And she immediately told Susan that absolutely she could stay with them. Now, Bill wasn't happy about this idea because he really wasn't that into Susan, and he was actually planning on breaking up with her.
Oh, no.
And Bill tried to talk his mother out of letting her stay, but Madalyn said, I am not sending her back to get beaten. So Susan stayed. And all was quiet for about 2 months. And then Susan's father filed charges against Bill for kidnapping and for trying to convert Susan to atheism. Well, the family found out about the charges in the evening paper. And due to the charges, Bill and Madalyn could both face jail time. And Madalyn knew that she had no friends in the Baltimore court system.
Well, no. You just pissed them all off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to avoid the jailhouse, Madalyn decided that Bill and Susan should get married. So they did. I mean, he was 18, she was 17, and they had to go to a county where there would be no need for Susan's family to sign a consent. So they did. They got married. And they waited. But their court summons never arrived, so they decided they just didn't need to pursue it any farther. They didn't need to bother. No summons showed up. But of course, court carries on as usual, and arrest warrants were issued for Bill and Susan. Oh, fun little fact now. Now Susan's pregnant. Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, shit.
So Madalyn decided she'd send him up to New York. Figured if they can't find him, they can't arrest him. And the two set up in a crummy hotel room. Susan's father found out that the kids had left Baltimore, and being that he was friends with the judge, he told that judge. And the judge added more contempt charges and more potential jail time to the case. And about after 2 weeks, the kids came back to Baltimore. Well, one of the neighbors saw it, saw the kids arrive, and they tipped off the cops that the kids were back. And 3 police cruisers showed up at Madalyn's house. Now, Madalyn saw him arrive and began screaming for Bill to get the tape recorder. She wanted this impending clash documented. So cops, they come up, they knock on the door, and they tell Madalyn that they were there to take Susan back to her father. Madalyn curtly asked them, "You have a warrant?" They said, "No, but we can get one." And so she told them, "Without a warrant, you can go ahead and fuck off."
Yes.
Damn.
I love these people.
So the cops, they went back to their car to try to figure out a strategy. So Madalyn, at this point, she knows they're not just going to go away.
Right.
So she tells Bill, "Go outside and create a distraction, and I will take Susan and make a run for it to the Atheist World Headquarters," which was basically her office.
Oh,
And-
where's that at?
And she said, "If I can get there, I can claim religious sanctuary." So Bill did. He walked outside, walked straight up to the cops, And one of the officers told Bill, hey, look, kid, we don't want any trouble. Go back in the house until we can get this all straightened out. Instead, Bill began explaining how this is just all a big misunderstanding. I'm married to her. And as he's pleading his case, Madalyn and Susan are seen making a run for it out of the side of the house. Well, the officer attempts to give chase, but Bill, he steps in front of him. And the officer says, get out of my way, boy. And Bill says, no, and he shoves the cop backwards.
Ooh,
and the shit hit the fan.
Nope.
Uh-huh.
Don't do that.
Bill was swarmed by cops and being pummeled by fists and billy clubs. And the distraction allowed Madalyn and Susan to escape. And as the car streaked past the melee, Madalyn screaming out the window, you can't do that! You don't have any warrants! Well, now, in an effort to help her grandson, Lena comes out of the house.
Oh,
and she goes straight up to a cop and she slaps him across the face. So the cop, he goes to grab her and Lena passes flat out, just falls, face plants on the lawn. Ugh. And Lena's down. Well, now Irv, he's watching all this crap from the house. He goes outside, he scoops up the old lady, and he carries her back into the house. And of course, the cops follow him because she's just assaulted an officer.
Yeah.
Finally, Bill is put in the back of the cop car. Bill's still been fighting this whole time. And Bill is put in the back of the cop car. Now, by this time, Madalyn has stashed Susan at the Atheist headquarters, i.e. her office. And she's arriving back home because she's going to deal with these cops. So she goes in the house and she tries to get the cops off her property and out of her house by macing them with her mace pen. But the damn thing wouldn't spray. So the cops, they had to get control of this situation. So they decided that they were going to have to physically remove Madalyn. This was not going to be an easy task.
Good fucking luck.
Mm-hmm.
And here is where you can cue the cartoon scene chase music.
Oh, God.
They attempted to get a hold of Madalyn. And she screamed, she yelled, she kicked, she bit, she clung to every piece of furniture, dragging some of it along with her as she was being pulled from the house, wedging chairs into doorways in an effort to stop the removal. She anchored herself to the carpet and the rugs, dragging them behind her. The entire time screaming, Nazi stormtroopers, you have no right to arrest me without a warrant. And when they finally drug her out of the house and into the yard, the spectacle continued. She was grabbing at the bushes, digging her fingers into the lawn, hurling chunks of grass and dirt at the officers, trying to roll like an alligator to escape their grip. And the neighbors, having heard the commotion, have gathered on the lawn. And the good Christians that they were begin to cheer the cops on, screaming, hit her again, get her.
Good God. Oh, my Lord.
What a scene.
No shit.
It took roughly 10 policemen 30 minutes to get Madalyn into the back of the cop car.
Holy crap.
Where she was promptly taken to jail and put in a holding cell. Oh, but Madalyn isn't done fighting. When she was given her jailhouse dinner, she threw it against the wall. And when they came in to take her out of her cell for booking and fingerprinting, she went limp. Damn, dead weight on the floor. Half a dozen officers were needed to drag her from the cell and into the booking room. When they tried to take her fingerprints, she warned the officer they better knock her out because she didn't plan on complying. So they opted to wait on taking the prints and decided they'd just take her mugshot instead. Again, she told the officers, hope you know how to take it laying down because I don't have any plans on standing up.
What the fuck?
And she's a pretty stocky woman too, right?
She's a big lady.
She's a pretty big lady.
She's built like a Dallas Cowboys linebacker. They have to drag her around all the time.
I can totally see why this woman is the most hated woman in America. Jesus. Oh my God.
I mean, she ain't messing around, man. She just making this difficult as she possibly can.
Now, ultimately, she was not fingerprinted and her mugshot was not taken. They knew who she was. So they returned her to her cell, where even more fuckery ensued. She took off her shoes and began banging them on the bars of the cell and began screaming at the top of her lungs, Jesus loves me.
Oh my God. Wow.
And she sang it as loudly as possible.
Wow.
Like, these cops rue the day they ever tried to take her to jail.
They were like, can we just take her back home?
Can you imagine the hungover drunk in the corner who was just trying to catch a nap before his wife came to bail him out, going, I did not sign up for this shit. I'm just trying.
Wow.
So, I know. Can you tell why I was so... I really like this woman makes me laugh, but I got to hurry up. We're never going to get into this. So after night in jail, Madalyn and Bill had earned an extra 10 felony counts, including resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, and contempt. And they were released into the custody of Leonard Kirpelman, their lawyer. And as they got ready to face the jury, the circus was in full swing. Walking into the courtroom, Madalyn cussed them all, reporters, cops, and spectators. She was an equal opportunity offender. And once the judge heard all of the information about the incident, he decided to quadruple their bail to $20,000, which was a sum that they didn't have. And Bill, who'd been pretty quiet to this point, he snapped and he screamed at the judge, I will not go back to jail, you coward, you Christian, you Catholic. So it took 5 bailiffs to get Bill back under control and back into his cell. And then Madalyn jumps into the fracas and she starts yelling, leave my son alone, you Catholic bastard. It would take an additional 4 officers to restrain Madalyn.
Wow.
Did you have a comment you wanted to put up?
No, I did not.
Okay. So Leonard Kirpelman finally found a bail bondsman that was willing to put up bail money and get his clients out of jail. And as they left the jail, Madalyn and Bill tried to get the press to take pictures of the injuries because they did have injuries.
Wow.
But the press wouldn't do it. And the headline in the paper the next day read, Madalyn Murray assaults police officers. And when they got home, Madalyn, she called a family meeting. Fearing that they couldn't get a fair trial, she decided that they should make a run for it. Now, that didn't work out too well for him last time. Now, old Irv, he didn't want to go. And so Madalyn reminded him that if he stayed, he was going to have to get a job and he was going to have to pay the rent all on his own. So Irv reconsidered and he decided he'd go. Now, she first wanted to go to Cuba and then thought, maybe Russia. But finally decided that they would go to Hawaii because it had a large Buddhist population. And she considered Buddhist fancy atheists that like to chant.
Oh, my God.
And also, Madalyn had a whole lot of counterculture group friends. Okay. And before they leave, of course, somebody had to take care of the house. And she took great delight in securing some friends from the Black Liberation Army to stay at her house while she was gone. She thought that was a perfect way to piss off her uptight white conservative neighbors. So she was bringing in anybody to keep causing trouble even whenever she wasn't there. Now, once all that was handled, they fled to Hawaii. And a Unitarian pastor allowed them to live in the loft space above the church. Now, the Murrays were tried in absentia in Baltimore, and Madalyn was sentenced to 1 year in county jail, and Bill got 6 months in county and a $500 fine. However, they were still both facing up to 100 years in jail, each as a result for the brawl with the cops.
Wow.
And in August of 1964, the courts began trying to extradite Madalyn and Bill back to Baltimore. Oh, and she fought the extradition, saying that if she returned to Baltimore, she'd be killed. And she might not have been wrong. Now, in Hawaii, she wasn't laying low. She went back to filing lawsuits to remove God from schools there and to remove God from public gatherings. And she was such a pain in the ass that the Maui government actually offered to pay for her to go to Russia.
Whoa, damn.
Yeah. Now, in 1965, remember, Bill's wife, Susan's pregnant. And in 1965, Susan has their little girl, a little girl named Robin. Now, shortly after this, Bill, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he takes to beating Susan. And Madalyn often would have to pull Bill off her. And with an extradition looming, and maybe thinking that perhaps she needed to separate the couple, Madalyn decided that she and Bill would flee to Mexico, but the rest of the family, they needed to stay in Hawaii. So again, using her counterculture contacts, they got fake IDs and fake paperwork. and they dressed in disguises and boarded a plane for Mexico City. Madalyn boarded the plane dressed as a nun.
Of course she did.
So once they get to Mexico City, Madalyn's hired as a teacher at Blake College by Professor Raymond Pete. He liked her notoriety, and he thought that, by hiring her, that would bring more students onto campus.
Mm-hmm.
But the students, let me back up. Pete also, he started helping her apply for asylum. So he was trying to get her political asylum in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
However, her classes didn't go so well, and the students didn't take to her overbearing, brash style. And one night in protest, they jumped up on the table and they started dancing barefoot through her dinner, one leaving a footprint right in the middle of her mashed potatoes.
Oh my God.
And after she finished cursing them, she laughed and seemed to admire their rebellious spirit. A few days later, the cops showed up and rounded up the students and deported them. Madalyn had called the federales and reported that the students were drug dealers and provided a needle as proof.
What the fuck?
By the way, the needle she provided was for a dog that had to have injections of antibiotics for an ear infection.
Oh my God. You just you don't want to be on this woman's bad side. No,
not at all.
All I keep thinking is, don't fuck with me, fellas. That's all I keep thinking. Now, Madalyn also tried to take over Blake College and make it an atheist institution.
Mm-hmm.
And when Professor Pete went out of town for 10 days, she appointed herself registrar and had students make out their tuition checks to her.
Whoa.
Fuck. Okay, then.
Now, while in Mexico, Madalyn also meets Richard O'Hair. He was a strange older man who loved to drink and fancied himself somewhat of a cowboy. And he was also known for falling off his horse. He was usually too drunk to stay on it. Okay.
Tahoe Silver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he would tell people that he was an artist, but after a few drinks, he would say that he was an ex-CIA agent turned FBI informant who was sent there to keep an eye on a group of American weirdos in Mexico. Now, there is a grain of truth to his story.
Really?
Yeah, because he was absolutely a snitch. But he wasn't really good at it. I mean, do you really tell people you're a snitch if you're a snitch? I'm kind of sucked at his job. But didn't matter. Something about him Madalyn liked, and she fell for him. Now, during this time, her son Bill had turned into a cad. I mean, even though he was married, he was screwing his way through Mexico. And one day he received a letter from his wife that was saying she needed him to pick up a friend who needed some help. Okay, he shows up, only to find his wife and his baby standing there. And like any Lothario that had been caught, he called his mama. So they all go back to live with Madalyn, one big happy family again. In September of 1965, the Mexican authorities decided to extradite Madalyn and Bill. And in reply, she announced that she planned to marry Richard O'Hair. They didn't care. She was sent to Austin, Texas to await extradition back to Baltimore. But in a stroke of luck, her conviction was vacated. A smart lawyer for the ACLU appealed a case concerning the conviction of a Buddhist murderer. The jury that was impaneled had to swear on a Bible and affirm belief in a supreme being. Now, Buddhist, atheists, and agnostics don't believe in a supreme being. And thus, his constitutional right to be judged by a jury of his peers had been violated. And the court agreed. And that agreement caused 2,500 grand jury indictments to be vacated. And now that the precedent had been set, the ACLU filed to vacate Madalyn and Bill's indictment as well. And it was granted. So the city of Baltimore dropped the charges.
Wow.
So in October, lucky, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in October of 1965, with jail no longer looming over her head, Madalyn Murray married Richard O'Hair. And they decided to stay in Texas and settle in Austin and founded the American Atheist organization. And the organization advocated for separation of church and state, free birth control, removal of tax exemptions for churches, and they provided for a defense of civil rights and non-believers. And they also addressed issues of First Amendment public policy. Now, Madalyn was the group's first chief executive officer and public voice and face of atheism. Now, Madalyn and Richard O'Hair formed what was called the Poor Richard's Universal Life Church. And they did this only to dramatize the folly of tax exemptions for religious institutions. And Richard O'Hair was the president, pastor, and prophet. Madalyn was the bishop. Now, unlike her other organizations, Poor Richard's Church never did get a tax exemption, but nonetheless, Madalyn took to wearing a clerical collar just for effect. Now here's the side note. They called it Poor Richard's because every time people would find out that Richard O'Hair was married to Madalyn Murray O'Hair, they would be, oh, poor Richard, he's married to Madalyn.
I thought it was a reference to Ben Franklin. I didn't know it was
No. And the pair was very good together for a while. But eventually, Richard's excessive drinking was just too much. And although the marriage resulted in a separation, she did remain married to Richard O'Hair until he died in 1978. So now, along with her newsletter, her magazine, her fundraising, her court cases, she started doing interviews, and she chose the most radical places to be interviewed that she could. And she started with Playboy. In a 1965 Playboy magazine interview, she described religion as a crutch and an irrational reliance on superstition and supernatural nonsense. She also described herself as a militant feminist and expressed her dissatisfaction with women's inequality in America. And she stated, America is still a very much, I'm quoting, America is still a very much male-dominated society. Most American men feel threatened sexually unless they're taller than the female, more intellectual, better educated, better paid, and higher placed status-wise in the business world. They've got to be the authority, the final word. And they say they're looking for a girl just like the girl who married dear old dad, but what they really want and what they usually get is an empty-headed little chick who's very young, very physical, and very submissive. Well, I just can't see either a man or a woman in a dependency position, because from this sort of relationship flows a feeling of superiority on one side and inferiority on the other. And that is a form of slow poison. And as I see it, men wouldn't want someone inferior to them unless they felt inadequate themselves.
Damn.
Good Lord.
This in Playboy, a male
dominant. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
a magazine for men.
Wow.
I mean, but you know, it was the 60s. It was time to be angry and outrageous and, outside the mainstream, fight the man and screw the establishment. And Madalyn was an expert on that. She was featured in major profiles in Time, Newsweek, the Saturday Evening Post, and then she hit the TV talk shows and became a ratings darling. Her rise coincided with the rise of talk shows and the televised debates, and she was a perfect match for this new medium. O'Hair was smart, well-read, and a powerful speaker. She could be a very magnetic personality when she wasn't pissing off the audience with her ideas. And in 1967, when a young man named Phil Donahue started a talk show in Dayton, Ohio, he had Madalyn Murray O'Hair as his very first guest. He wanted to discuss her Supreme Court win and her atheist beliefs. Donahue recalled in a 1987 interview that the live audience and call-in format actually happened by accident. The first show was intended just to be Donahue and his guest alone in a studio, but an audience mistakenly showed up for a canceled variety show, and rather than turn the crowd away, Donahue said, somebody said, why don't we sit them down and let them watch the interview? Okay.
All right.
So the inaugural show started off with a bang when Madalyn pointed to the Dayton audience and said, I think at one time or another, each of these good people here have doubted the existence of God, were her first words.
Holy shit.
And Donahue, he takes the reins at this point, and he asks his studio audience if they would mind raising their hands if they have ever doubted God. Not a single damn hand went up.
I said, Fred in the third row was like, I thought I was going to watch a dog spin plates. I was going to get into a philosophical debate here.
Now, Donahue noticed very quickly that during the commercial breaks, the audience was asking questions. And he quickly realized the audience actually wanted to be involved. And Donahue thought that the audience questions were actually better than his were, and they could probably get away with a lot more than he could. And this ended up leading to his signature style, roaming the studio with a microphone, taking questions from the audience. Mm-hmm. And Donahue, in this moment, was actually pioneering the modern daytime talk show format. Mm-hmm. So in a 2016 interview with the Archive of American Television, Donahue described the very first show. He said, quote, "Can you imagine Dayton, Ohio at 10:30 in the morning? Turn on the television and there's this Donahue guy with the most hated woman in America. Honest to goodness, I didn't think I was going to be able to get out of this building alive. People went berserk. We knew we had to have personalities as guests on the show because that would motivate people to go to the phone. And the response was so intense that we paralyzed part of the phone system in Dayton."
Whoa.
Damn.
Donahue said that he never imagined that the show would become so popular. And he had Madalyn to thank for that. Now, from there on out, she became a regular on the talk show circuit. She was funny and smart and opinionated, and she was also bitter and mean. And she debated William F. Buckley, and boy, she pissed him off something solid. And she appeared on the Merv Griffin show, and eventually she got a seat on the couch on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And when Johnny introduced her, the band played "When the Saints Go Marching In" as her walkout music. Now, let me tell you.
What a dick.
What a dick. But I'll tell you, Madalyn was a natural on television, and she appeared again on the Phil Donahue Show in March of 1970 and debated Reverend Bob Harrington, who was known as the chaplain of Bourbon Street. Now, two peculiar things happened during this show. The first, Madalyn and the Reverend Bob Harrington formed an unlikely friendship because, let's face it, game recognized game. They really enjoyed debating with each other, and each time it was a fascinating battle of wits. They both had a grudging respect for each other, and they saw their differences, but also saw their similarities. They both enjoyed the spotlight. They both enjoyed a good fight. They both had a flair for dramatic. But most importantly, they were very aware of how religion, or lack thereof, could be profitable. So in October of 1977, they took their show on the road and they went on tour. They went to churches and revivals with their roles very well defined. Madalyn as the sinner and Preacher Bob as the saint. And they planned the arguments and the antics, upping the ante each time. Madalyn would tear pages out of the Bible. And at one point, she actually set the pages of the Bible on fire on stage. Now, Bob, he'd try to get her to repent and beg the believers to pray for her salvation. And then, of course, they would pass that collection plate. And the show always ended with the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. And right on cue every time when the words "One Nation Under God" were uttered, Madalyn would storm off the stage in a fit of profanities. And when the crowds were gone, they would divvy up the cash. After 15% came out for booking fees, they would split the take, 55% to Bob and 45% to Madalyn. And Madalyn thought she was getting ripped off.
So she became kind of like a circus sideshow.
Yeah.
At this point. I mean, she found out what she could make some money off of, but
I think she was always a circus sideshow. She just figured out how to get paid for it.
Yeah, I guess so.
A very large personality, very performative. You know, and this like she was made for the stage.
Yes, she was. Now that was the first peculiar thing that came out of that 1970s Phil Donahue interview. The second strange thing that happened was during the show, Phil Donahue asked the audience, "Do you think Madalyn can be saved, or is it just too late?" And a sweet little housewife from Dayton stood up and answered the question and said, "If she isn't saved before she dies, I'd like to have it published how she dies, because I believe she'll die such a miserable death that it will convince all of these that are following her that she's wrong.
Jesus.
Well, Madalyn reveled in the attention, and she played the media very well. And while she couldn't get rid of the tax exemptions for churches, she absolutely could get into Larry Flint's Hollywood parties. And she went. And in 1979, she did an interview with Hustler magazine, and Larry Flint found her so fascinating that he asked her to be a contributing columnist for Hustler magazine, which she did. And in 1963, while Madalyn busied herself with the fundraising and publicity, Bill had begun to spiral. He drank heavily, he continued to beat up Susan, and then he had started beating his baby daughter, Robin.
Wow.
It got so bad that Susan divorced him and ran back to her parents, leaving Robin in the care of Bill. He was drafted into the military and he worked for an airline. And after that, he just ran off and left his daughter Robin under the care of his mother. He got married again, but his second marriage was falling apart as well. And he had a few run-ins with the police. Once when the police were called due to a domestic disturbance that he had with his wife, he accidentally fired a rifle through the door of the cops. Well, he was charged with aggravated assault and sentenced to 5 years of probation. And Bill says that this incident was his wake-up call, and he turned to Alcoholics Anonymous to try to get himself right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Madalyn, always dutiful when it came to the family, she took care of Robin. And when Robin was 9, Madalyn formally adopted her. Now, 1980, Mother's Day. Bill betrayed Madalyn. He declared to the world that he believed in God. Oh, but he didn't just believe in God. He'd become a gospel singing, of the evangelical preaching, salary tithing, Bible thumping Christian Baptist. And he had found Jesus Christ. O'Hair disowned him immediately. And in the few statements she made to the press concerning Bill, she said, "One could call this a postnatal abortion on the part of the mother, I guess. I repudiate him entirely and completely, and for now and all times. He is beyond human forgiveness."
Jesus.
Another statement she said was, "Bill simply got fed up with being poor and he sold out to the highest bidder. Religion." The only other thing she would say about him was, "I have one son who is sane, and then I have the other one. There's a bad apple in every barrel." And after that, Madalyn refused to discuss her eldest son conversion ever again.
So do you think that we know that she is a performance artist. We'll say that. Do you think that she actually believed what she said about her son, or was she just like putting on airs for the public and like secretly they were like, "Oh,
she was estranged from him for the rest of her life."
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So I'm on the last little page, and then we can really discuss her.
Okay.
So while O'Hair remained a polarizing figure in the 1980s, she served as chief speechwriter for Larry Flint's 1984 presidential campaign and continued to be a regular talk show guest. She began working the college circuit, speaking on the separation of church and state and the landmark Supreme Court decision that made her the most hated woman in America. And at her highest point, she was pulling in a salary of $3,000 per speaking engagement. And all through the 70s and 80s, the American Atheist organization was making lots of money. People all over the country wrote her letters of praise that included generous checks for her nonprofit, American Atheists. And the best day the organization ever had, according to Madalyn's journal, was $800,000. So other than Bill, this was a good period for Madalyn, personally and professionally. The American Atheist was the most successful national atheist group. It boasted 30 channels, 30 chapters, a cable TV, sorry, I'm getting mush mouth, a cable TV show, and a radio show that ran on 150 stations. In 1987, Madalyn bought a new headquarters for more than $1 million, and she paid cash. It was a 16,100 square foot monolith of a red brick building and mirrored glass. So it's red brick and mirrored glass, and it sat in North Austin. It was squatty, hard, and earthbound, just like its owner. Her headquarters had its own printing press, tape duplication center, 25,000 volume library, luxury offices, and Madalyn also had at least 7 corporations, each with a hand-picked board of directors. The American Atheists were able to get a religious recognition, and she took full advantage of the tax exemption from state sales and property taxes. She and her lawyers continued to file lawsuits. Some were filed on behalf of church and state violations. Some were filed to generate publicity, and some were filed just for the hell of it. And Madalyn reigned over this vast empire. And then she vanished. Tune in for part 2 next week.
You're cutting it there. You're
Yes.
cutting it right there.
Oh man.
Oh my God, y'all! This is just getting started.
Yeah. This is a wild ride. This one is.
Can you see why I have been so excited to talk about her?
Mm-hmm.
This woman is fascinating.
She's a trip.
Dude, she has got. Listen, I mean, I understand she's very polarizing. Not everybody's gonna like her.
Yeah.
But she's got some fucking balls, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just throughout her whole life. I mean, she obviously has her own sets of beliefs of what she believes in and what she lives by and all this kind of stuff. And good for her. Everybody has that in their life.
Yeah.
But she's like, you ain't gonna tout yours over mine. Fuck that shit.
And think about
I'm
the
gonna
time
shut
when
you
she's
down.
doing it. Like the time she's doing it too.
and
Not only is she taking on religion, but she's also a woman at the time taking on religion.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
like
is-
she's a stripper in a world of Betty Crocker. Yeah,
Right.
She don't exactly fit the hell in.
That is such a good analogy. That's such a good analogy.
You know?
A stripper in a world of Betty Crockers.
Yes. She's screwing up them birthday cakes. She like, I think not.
Oh my God, there's a whole other half of this story. I can't believe you're gonna cut it right there, Shelly. Oh,
I
man.
told you when I told you guys on the phone there was no way I could do this in one episode. Do you see why?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you kind of know Madalyn right now? Do you kind of feel
absolutely.
like you know Madalyn Murray O'Hair? Do you
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like you kind of almost see why she does the things she does? And if you don't necessarily understand, can you see how she decided to walk that line?
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
can you, if you don't understand her, can you at least see her motivations?
Oh yeah.
You know? So, and I'll tell y'all, I've been giddy about her. I've been like, I cannot wait. Child, I'm going to tell you guys, podcast listeners, this original story, this part 1 has been cut down to 29 pages. The whole thing that I wrote initially was like 148. You're welcome. This is why it's going to be a part 1 and a part 2, because there is no way for me to let you know about the most hated woman in America in just 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Oh, and
No.
she went well beyond out of her way. Not saying she was wrong in doing so. Well beyond out of her way in gaining that title properly.
Oh, she earned every bit of it.
Oh, yeah.
She went against the biggest machine that's freaking out there, you know.
And she won.
Mhm.
And she won. That's the reason right there is she won.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Shit. Oh
So
my God.
thoughts right now on anything? Do we have any listeners
She-
that are just sitting there with their mouth open going, what the hell is
Everybody's in here calling her a crazy bat and this woman's crazy and all of this stuff.
Uh-huh.
So
She is bold, she is brash, and she is unapologetic. She does not care. And she, you know,
she might be crazy, but damn, she funny.
crazy like a fox.
Mhm.
She is, but the thing is, the one thing that I do find, well, the biggest thing I find issue with her with though is the way she treated her son. I think that sucks because he was in a bad place in his life and needed help, and whatever got him the help that he needed, she should have been supportive. I understand that she had her beliefs. I understand that, you know, people have their convictions and have their beliefs, but you know,
I think that mixes in. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think
Oh,
it
you're fine.
stems from her own childhood with her
True.
father.
Absolutely.
And then
think
you
you're right.
add in her set of beliefs of what she is believing in, everything that she has done throughout her life. We see how brash she is and bold
Absolutely.
and out there. I mean, I'm going to forever imagine suing somebody for child support by holding up a pair of pants and be like, I didn't fuck him. How did I
How the hell
got
did
these?
get these?
You know what? That's fucking mic drop and just, here you go. I think that was a mixture of the two. I think it's her own childhood, what she faced with her father, and then plus you add in her set of beliefs. That was her reaction to her son. I mean, she felt the ultimate betrayal because he was at the center of the big, huge main court case of why she became the most hated woman in America, and she reveled in that.
She supported him and the entire family too. He didn't have a job during any of this time. She's supporting him.
Oh, her son did.
Oh, her son's wife, their baby, everything. Mm-hmm. She is taking care of a bunch of deadbeats. Let me tell you, she hated her mother. She hated her father. She hated her brother Irv, and she got to where she really just hated her son too. She felt like it. She was, and there's stuff I left out. Bill was constantly asking her for money. He'd go off on some ball bender, come back and be like, "Mom, she got okay." So when he shot at that police officer, accidentally, as he put it, Madalyn made all the calls and contacts she could because he should have gone to jail for that. But instead, he got 5 years probation. That was because she made phone calls to people she knew and said, "What do I have to do? I don't want my kid to go to jail." So let's not overlook that. But if I went to tell you every single story, we would. This would be a 6-parter. Yeah. And y'all, I left out stories. And I'll tell you, the stories I told you were ones that I could verify in more than one spot. My rule was 3. Yeah. Now, the conga line on the table and putting their foot in her mashed potatoes, I only found that 2 places, but that's how deep dive I did. You go try to find that story somewhere else. Yeah. It took me a long time, but the first time I found it, I went, I have to find this one other place before I can tell it. So.
Now, I would say that this woman bodies that fuck the man's spirit.
And she does.
She is a true American. This woman. She is. Damn it! I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I dare you to tell me I can't do it.
Well, and the thing is, and we actually I was just about to say it. We got to put it in the comments at the same time. She's smart about it too.
Absolutely.
This woman is so smart about it. The way she goes about it. Mm-hmm. You may not like it. People may not agree with it, but this woman is freaking smart.
You have to admire her, though.
Oh God, yeah,
you have to admire this woman. She is a hoot and a half. This lady.
So. I can't wait for it. She wouldn't shut up and she wouldn't conform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't wait for the part 2 because that's the whole part of the story that I know, and so now knowing what I know and pulling it into the part 2,
I bet you don't know.
I bet you did too. My deep dive. I bet you did too. Oh God.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Am I getting a lot of hate for cutting it off without telling them I was going to cut it off? Don't hate on me.
No, everybody's actually they're like, can't wait for part 2. Can't wait for the finale.
I love that.
So
just hang, man.
Come back next week.
I'm going to tell you what, if the conclusion is anything like this one, it's going to be a hell of an episode.
Final thoughts, gentlemen. Blake, final thought on what you know so far about Madalyn Murray O'Hair?
I admire her. Mm-hmm. I think she is brash. She is very polarizing. I can see why she became the most hated woman in America and why people just did not like her and or agree with her. But she is bold and she's smart about what she's doing.
Final thoughts, Ryan?
Same thing. You may not like everything that she's doing, but you've got to admire that lady. She is smart, she is calculated, and she knows exactly what she's doing, and she is going to do it come hell or high water. And I think that's really, really cool. So
my final thought is I have not stopped giggling about all the fun things I found out about her. Mm-hmm. And this woman is half a brick off brilliant. You have to admire that. And at the end of the day, what she was fighting for, separation in church of state. If you have some kind of theory going, I want God in it. Okay, you better hope that your God is the one that's in charge, because suddenly what if it was, today we're going to pray to Krishna or to Allah, or would you want your child to have to do that? So you kind of have to take a step back. She actually, while you may not like what she did in that landmark Supreme Court decision, she actually was protecting you, even though you didn't know you needed protection. Mm-hmm. So I think that I'm kind of got a little girl crush. I'm admiring I'm admiring the size of the cojones on that woman.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Blake, why don't you tell them?
She's got a big brass pair she carries around with her.
Yeah. I don't think that those are breasts on her chest. I think they're balls. So,
Probably.
so, Blake, why don't you tell them everything they need to know?
Cool. Awesome. Will do. Got a few. One of these days, I'm just not even going to have to. I'm just going to start rattling shit off because we've got more announcements that we got to talk about. Giving another quick mention and shout out to Broadhead Manor in Wisconsin, the Old Park Hotel in Ballinger, Texas. If you have watched our past episodes, we've had the owners of these locations on our podcast as special guests. So shout out to Dan and Connie LaFave again with Old Park, and Bill Walter, hashtag Sir Sexy, with Broadhead Manor. Y'all, these owners are attempting to restore their locations so that groups like ours can continue to investigate them, as well as be able to host gatherings like Paracons, charity events, stuff like that. So looking for a little bit of help. Now in the footer of all of our episodes, you're going to see a link for the GoFundMe's for both of these locations. If you've got $1, $5, $10, whatever you can donate to help with the preservation of these locations, please give if you can, so that we can continue to enjoy them. And speaking of Old Park, this weekend, May 12th and 13th, we will be in Ballinger, Texas, speaking at the West Tex Paracon with with amazing lineup of speakers, including John Zaffis, the Kling brothers, Natalie Jones from Paraflix Paranormal Plus. We're going to be doing a special screening of the Old Park Hotel documentary that is a ScareNetwork.tv exclusive. So if you want to get your general admission tickets, you can go to the West Tex Paracon Facebook page, and they have the website on there. Tickets are still available. However, the ghost hunts are sold out. So, and then lastly, July 14th through 16th, we are going to be speaking at Metacon in Kansas City. They also have another great lineup of speakers, as well as 40 plus vendors and over 30,000 square feet of shopping, fun, and healing. And we only have one ticket left for the 2-night Old Park Hotel investigation with us that is currently on sale. That's one ticket. That's going to be October 6th and the 7th. We're going to be opening up the Old Royals County Jail as well. So if you went with us in April, you're going to be getting this 2 locations for the same price as the last one you came. So make sure you get that before it sells out, because we anticipate it selling out pretty quick. Make sure you're following us on our Eventbrite page so you can get notified when the tickets like those events go for a sale. And because we got a lot of other stuff that's going to be launching later this year as well. So we're going to make sure that all that gets posted up to our social media channels. Make sure, speaking of which, you're following us across all our social channels to stay up to date on all the exclusive content we have coming. We got a lot of crap coming. Go find the, I like to say a lot of crap. Go find the link tree link in the About Me section of the bio sections of our pages. Be taken directly where you want to go, including our public events and our Patreon page, which is just $5 a month, and you can instantly unlock I think it's like over 100 videos by now of us
It's over 100. Yeah,
being stupid. And yeah, tonight was
goofy as hell,
bad on the pre-broadcast, but anyways,
moving on.
Yep. But make sure you review us as well wherever you can. The more you review us, the more we are pushed out to reach more people, which in turn will allow us to bring you more and more content. And as always, any questions, comments, or concerns, or stories, or whatever you want to share with us, those can be submitted to us at the evppod@gmail.com. That's THEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Go and hit that subscribe button, like, share, and subscribe. So we want to thank you guys so much for joining us this week on Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelley Pruitt, my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Mr. Ryan Roberts. We hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday.
Bye, y'all.